journey, it's likely something would have happened to them.
Yeah.
And that's about their parents sending them to those schools as well. So again,
but of course, once you're outside of that, I'd set up the charity Not School, which we built learning for 1,000 children a year who've been excluded from school. You've got to be pretty naughty to get it chucked out, And they were full of wisdom about the moment when the school stopped being the safe place for them, and the family already wasn't, because that's what had gone wrong. But their community of learners was, and that sort of metacognition, learning about your learning, thinking how can this be better, is the genie you never get back in a bottle. I remember them saying once, the thing with school is when you're really crap at something, they give you more of it, which was a memorable moment. Yeah, they do, By getting that right is absolutely key.
Well, I work with referral units, so I was in one the other day, and I had 40 of them in a room. Normally they only work in 6 to 8 because they're so violent. And I spoke to them again just about what are their ambitions. In that room they had somebody wants to be a property developer, paramedic, you just name it, it was all there. And by discussing what that was, you could then see, well, now you can engage them in education, in knowledge and all the other things, because you know what they want, that intrinsic motivation, which is what I think is so key, their passions, in order to help them learn. Because I'm not going to learn something that I'm not engaged with. It just becomes really difficult. And I think that helps.
And we're in a world of lifelong learning anyway. It's impossible, I think, to think we could, you've only got 9 more years of learning ahead of you, then you're out of St Andrews or wherever you end up. I think you should go to Fremantle, but, you'll be out of university then, but your learning's not going to stop, is it? You're going to be, your dad's still learning now, and he's 104 or whatever he is, It's, you keep on learning all your life. So it seems silly that we should stop. So for all 3 of you, your role in making learning happen, and I'll start with Andrew because you meet and drink for him really, but making learning happen for adults and people in residential homes in their 90s, and what do you need in the way of help to be able to reach learning across people's lives better? Well, don't say cheap TV license, because that's a second conversation.
Obviously it's engaging relevant content, because one of the things we talk about is that learning should be motivating, not for the motivated.
Yeah.
That really it should be the learning experiences that make you want to learn more, that make you thirsty for the next bit of learning, rather than some dry, dreary experience that is because you have an ambition to get to another step. The content that you access is the thing that triggers the connections that you're going to make. So certainly media is very strong at being able to provide that spark of enthusiasm, and I've no doubt that something could be produced that would work with Finlay and his areas of enthusiasm, but that would actually, within that, have so many little pebbles in the pond that would spark off interest in other areas that you wouldn't necessarily trace through the initial first watch, because media is completed by the audience. So by creating rich, motivating content, which is essentially focused on learning, you're then creating the links and connections and the desire to walk through the next door. And I think the more you recognise how people will take their own lines of their kind of stream of consciousness learning through one thing to the next talk, to the next piece.
It's all about that transparency, isn't it? Seeing.
So you become your own curator, really.
I mentioned earlier, my daughter runs this beachschool.org if you want to go there. Really interesting. But the big surprise there has been the number of pensioners who come down to watch the little ones learning and are now saying, can we have sessions for us as well? So, Twinkle for pensioners, what do you reckon?
We've already got it.
Have you?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Here's 2 things though. Tell us about it.
We had an expert locally who's done a lot of work in care homes, who produced a series of resources that are not predominantly necessarily, but a lot of them are for adults with dementia. So there's kind of like reminiscence packs, which kind of promotes conversation, which helps memory, which helps short-term memory as well as picking up the long-term memory. Different topics, things that they might not have seen recently. So, for example, like pictures of cigarette packets that were around before the war, and images that you don't necessarily see now, collections of resources about music halls and lots of questions to prompt conversations, especially as the person trying to prompt the conversation won't actually know what they're trying to ask about because they haven't got the context themselves.
Yeah, those long-term memories are a great route into your synapses, aren't they?
Yeah.
They really are. Look, the light's gone amber, so that's kind of, we need to focus a bit here, team. So my last big question for all four of you, really, is, about the change Prime Minister. Who knows who we're going to get, But if you could make one thing better in education right now, you could say, okay, we're going to do one thing, what would it be? And we're going to start with Andrew and then with you, mate.
It was a phrase I use a lot. It's make the important measurable, not the measurable important.
Oh, that's very, the people always attribute to Einstein that not everything that counts can be counted. Well, he never said it, but it's, that's exactly right. I like that.
I just want them to listen. Listen to teachers, listen to children.
Yeah. It's a big ask, isn't it? But, I mean, I go through the Department of Education. I'm carrying their bag at the moment, and there was a time when there was children's work all around the walls and places where all the children's work's gone. There's no art where you have disappeared from the department as an entity. There's just stuff there now. Really sad. So, listen, I'd just take both of those.
I would resource education fully so that you can give children adventures and experiences so that they can actually find their passions, they can find what's going to motivate them, and then I think you'll have no problems with education whatsoever.
The world seems to flip into two halves here. I mean, you've got the nations who are saying, oh yeah, if you like, yeah, okay, yeah. You've got the nations who are saying, golly gosh, we try and make education as cheap as we can. We're one of them right now, And the nations who are saying, I'll tell you what, we'll invest money in education because we're always going to get the money back in national income. There's a clear divide there, Oh, I'm allowed to take questions from the audience, and there's one right at the back here.
Hello.
He's keen and he's in the expensive seat, so we better listen.
I'm Chris Renshaw. I write music now, but in a former life I recorded quite a bit of educational audio for various companies. Two questions, and I know time is tight, so I'll be quick. The first one is, how much do you guys feel pressure to subvert cultural norms in some of the countries that you work in? I'll give you an example. I used to record English language programs for Qatar, and the company that published those to Qatar made a point of putting women in positions of power in any role play scenarios, and they realised that they were subverting cultural expectations, and I commend them for doing it, but I realise that it's a sort of dangerous thing to want to do. Are you guys active in that sort of process?
Quick answer each.
Not directly and consciously to subvert, but we certainly work by creating as diverse a picture as we can in any resource that we produce, so that we are being as global in the media that we put together, whilst at the same time not including things that we would know to be directly offensive. So it's a complex idea that yes, we certainly would try to include women in a range of roles, and classrooms, for example, of mixed ethnicity, etc. But I wouldn't say we are consciously trying to subvert.
Okay. I'll ask my second question quickly, because I know there are other questions in the room and time is really tight. Secondly, do you prioritise the countries that you try and work in? Because you've talked about learning education, and it's a great ideal, but I've sort of realised that that's not possible in some countries. So the programme that I work on now goes out in China, but it passes the censor in order to do that. And people talk about the World Wide Web and that anyone can have access to education, and I know that that's not true. And that essentially you might as well say it's the half World Web, because around China there's a massive firewall, so you can put anything you want up there, but people in China aren't going to necessarily be able to see it. And so with things like that in mind, do you try and prioritise the area where the countries of the world and that you can be most effective in?
I think we've got to be really careful not to think the Western perspective is the truth and light and the way forward. And I think one of the things I've learned as I've worked more and more and more in the world is to value other people's perspective and other people's cultures. And You know, you work in North Nigeria, and the reality there is if you build anything that looked like a school, Boko Haram going to come in the door and, you know, rape the teachers and kill the kids. So you've got to work in the context of where you are. But I think my absolute faith is that if we can give learning to everybody, then from that learning will emerge, you know, new ways of mutuality and community and new ways of doing things. But there won't necessarily be the way we do things here. And we have a huge firewall around Britain. It's called newspapers, you know, and it's very hard for, as you heard, very hard to get into those. So I'm not going to criticise China for doing differently what we do. They just do it differently. And my faith absolutely is give the power to the children, give them knowledge, give them deep understanding, give them the opportunity for ingenuity, and we will get there. I really do believe that with a passion. Look, the light's flashing, so they're all cutting throats down the front. We're in big trouble. I just want to say thank you, all of you, for what's been a really interesting conversation. I don't know if this is being streamed, but if you weren't here,